Now that we've completed and moved into our own off-grid home, we finally have some free time to help our son with his HYPERADOBE home build. Kyle lives on his own parcel of the property and for the last year or so has been working on his own home. He started by digging his own rubble footer by hand, and then I went up and helped him a little bit to stub up the lines for the utilities, including the septic, water, and electricity. He has a fully functioning solar system that we built in our first year out here, and he has water from the shared well that we have here on the property. So far, he's been doing this project almost completely solo, with just a little help from me bringing in the utilities into the pad. He's taking a minimal and low-cost approach to the home build. He's building an earthen structure using the HYPERADOBE method on a rubble foundation, and he's using all manual methods in the construction, so shovel and wheelbarrow throughout. We built a special dolly for him so that he'll be able to fill the HYPERADOBE bags all by himself, and so that's been really useful for this project. And here's a quick look at the foundation before he started the HYPERADOBE bag walls. He's done all this work completely by himself while we were building our home, and so we just got a few pictures of his progress whenever we went up to visit. Once he got the first couple of rows of earth bag in, he was ready for a door frame, so I helped him build that and get it installed, and he took it from there. He uses these wooden cleats to attach the wall to the door frame as he builds the wall. He's excavating his dirt from a convenient location nearby. It's been interesting to watch this hole grow as he builds this wall. He has moved literally tons and tons of dirt as he does this project solo. He excavates the dirt himself, and then he processes it, transports it, puts it into the bags, packs the bag. It's always fun to go up and visit and see the progress he's made. It's been interesting to watch this wall grow as he's, patiently built it layer after layer. Once he got the wall up to window height, I built him a frame for that, similar to the one I did around the door out of treated lumber. He has that in place here, and so he'll continue going up. He's going pretty minimal on the windows too, just one on the south side and then one in the door, and then he'll also be adding an idea of his own, some special lighting portals that will serve to add some additional light and ventilation to the home. Here's another look at his earth excavation pit that's grown through the year, and here's a casing that I made that'll go through the wall for the evaporative cooler. At this point in the build, he's putting in his light portals that we mentioned earlier and the tie-down straps. The light portals that we mentioned are a metal tube that he's putting through the wall in 6 locations to let in light. And the tie-down straps are a nylon strapping material that he puts through the bag at this layer, and then he'll wrap that over the top plate in order to secure the top plate to the wall. It's really amazing the progress that he's been able to make by less than a year, and now that our house is done, we're finally able to start helping. Since his walls are getting close to finish height, I decided the first thing I should do to help was to prepare the roof beams. We had some leftover C-purlins from our home build that he's decided to use on his house, so he's going to be using a beam construction for the roof just like we used on our house. We'll be building I-beams by putting 2 C-purlins back to back and bolting them together, and so that's what I'm working on here. The C-purlins are 6 inches wide with a 2.5-inch flange sticking out, and they're 20 feet long. The 20-foot length will be perfect for the home, so we won't need to cut these beams down. That length will span the entire width of his house and give him a nice eave on each side. Just as we did on our home build, we put the 2 metal beams back to back, and then I went about bolting them together. I use clamps to get everything lined up and held together while I start drilling the holes for the bolts. Here I'm marking out the spacing. I'm putting the bolts every 4 foot along the length and of course at each end, and I'm putting in 2 bolts at each location. I'm drilling through with a 3/8 metal drill bit here. It's a cobalt drill bit, high quality drill bit, and I'm using oil as I drill through to keep the drill bit from getting too hot. I'm also putting in the bolts as I go just so that things don't shift. I'm using a 3/8 inch bolt, and it has a lock washer on it so that it'll stay secure once it gets tight. I will mention that drilling through 2 layers of metal like this is incredibly hard on drill bits. And at first I was just burning through drill bits right and left. I couldn't find anything that would hold up until I tried a cobalt drill bit. And they really hold up really well. I was able to actually finish this complete project, which is 9 beams, with one drill bit. And so it's amazing that once you find the right drill bit, they can be incredibly durable. Once I have everything set up and get to drilling on these beams, it actually doesn't take as long as you might think. It takes about 30 minutes per beam to drill all the holes and get it all completely bolted up, so not too bad. I did consider welding these together instead of bolting them, and I'm sure that would have been a good option, and so didn't want to introduce a fire hazard by welding, and then also I didn't want to deal with the warpage that welding can bring. It takes a highly skilled welder to keep it from warping. Once the beams were all bolted together, my son-in-law came over and we loaded up the beams into the trailer to take them up to my son's property. These beams are heavy, but they're quite manageable for 2 people, so we loaded them up in the back of the trailer, and while we were at it, we decided to go ahead and work on that pile of sheet metal and other odds and ends that's been sitting out in front of our house since we started the build. We've used this location as a scrap pile, or as a place to store extra and scrap materials, both metal and wood, and since the house is done, we've decided to go ahead and try to move this pile to a different location over by the barn where it's out of the way and out of sight. It's just kind of out in the bushes, out behind the barn. It's out of sight and out of the way, but it's really useful to have a materials pile that you can go look through. Whenever we have a new project, we always come here first and see if there's anything that we can use for the project before we buy anything new. It's possible that we may use some of these to eventually finish out our shipping container barn into a shop. Once we finished offloading the shop material, we took the beams up to our son's property, and here you can see the journey April is filming from the back of the trailer. Once we arrived, we decided to offload the beams in an out-of-the-way location over by the solar rack. These beams are lighter than the ones we used in our house since they're 20 foot long instead of the 25 foot length in our house, and only 6 inches tall instead of the 8 inches tall. The 6-inch beam will provide plenty of strength for his house since he's only spanning 15 feet. There are 9 beams and we'll be putting them on 4-foot centers. Up to this point, Kyle has been doing all of this himself. We haven't even really seen the process because we've been down working at the house. We've never been up here while he was actually doing the HYPERADOBE build. And so this was our first chance to actually get to see him doing the work and see how he does it. I've just started helping him today, and I'm helping by bringing him the dirt, but he's still the one actually doing the HYPERADOBE process since I don't know how to do it. He's developed his own method of doing this, and he's overcome some real challenges. He's doing this solo. He's also working at height now. This wall is pretty high, and he's had to develop, a method to get the dirt up to that level. And I can be helping now because it's definitely harder to be working at height. I can at least bring the dirt to him and put it up on the scaffolding, and he can take it from there. Kyle is not the stereotypic builder personality. Building a house is the last thing he thought he would ever find himself doing. But after moving out onto the property and living in an RV for a while, he started considering his options and considering building. He then learned about the HYPERADOBE building process, and it appealed to him. It's something that he could do at a very low cost, that he could do all by hand and mostly all by himself. It's a whole lot of physical labor, but it's good exercise, and so he decided to go for it. Of course, he really didn't know at the beginning what he was getting into or just how it would all work out. It turns out that HYPERADOBE is the perfect thing for him. It is a building method that lends itself very well to a one-person job, and it uses materials that he's harvesting from the land. And with the investment of his labor, he's able to build a very solid home that'll be perfect for the desert. Adobe structures have been used in this area since ancient times, and they're well suited to this environment. It just makes sense to build a house out of the soil since there aren't a lot of large trees around here, so it's a ready and useful building material. The thick earthen walls provide a lot of thermal mass that helps to regulate temperatures in the hot summer and cool winter nights, which keeps the structure at a stable temperature that is actually livable without any additional heating or cooling. He decided to use 18-inch wide bags for this structure for a couple of reasons. It provides a nice wide working surface, and as you can see as he's walking up and down on that tall wall there, he has an 18-inch walking surface, which is nice. It also provides a nice thick wall, so 18 inches of thermal mass there. So it should be very stable, both from a temperature standpoint and from a structural standpoint. With the system he's using here with this bucket delivery system, the bags end up with a finished dimension of about 17.5 to 17.75 inches wide and about 4 inches thick. These HYPERADOBE bags really work well. The bags do not want to slip or slide. It's a large, flat surface, and the way the bags and the different layers make contact, it's super stable. This wall is absolutely rock solid. It feels so stable, it's amazing. And here he is loading the bag onto the bucket. He loads, kind of as much as he can fit or as much as he thinks he'll need for that run. It comes on a large spool, so he just takes off as much as he wants or as much as he can fit on the bucket. A bucket like this works for the 18-inch width bag as well as the 16-inch, but with the 18-inch bag it goes on a little easier and seems to come off a little easier as well. This material is UV resistant and seems to hold up very well to sunlight. It's also very grippy, and so the layers really stick together. They don't want to slide off at all. And also I think the cob is going to stick to this surface very well because it kind of has a porosity, or it has holes in it, and so it's really going to make the cobbing process easy. It would also be perfect for stucco, and we'll probably use stucco on the outside and cob on the inside. Another nice thing about the HYPERADOBE bags is that it's allowed him to do radiused or rounded corners. The other option for a sturdy corner is to build a buttress corner where you extend and overlap the wall as you build it up, but using this radius corner has really saved him a lot of time. It's way easier than doing the overlapping buttressed corner section, and it seems really sturdy. With HYPERADOBE, you have a lot more flexibility in how you build your structure. Different shapes and contours of the walls are possible. Another thing we like about it is that you can flatten the sides. So as he goes along here, not only is he tamping down the top, but he's also flattening out the sides of the bag, and so the walls end up being a lot flatter. Instead of having a radius bump for each layer where the bag goes, he flattens that out to where there's just small crevices in between the bags. And I think it's going to make it a lot easier to stucco or cob the walls. It'll use a lot less material. And here's a look at the other side of the process. I am in the dirt pit. We're about 4 foot deep down here, and it goes through several layers of different types of soil just in this one spot. So, the top soil for about 1.5 foot down is just a nice, kind of even consistency, brown, lovely topsoil. Then it gets a little more sandy, and then it turns into a caliche with some clay in there. So just in this 4 feet, I'm getting all different types of soil. And so as I bring it down from the side, I'm trying to kind of mix it all together so that the soil he's putting into the bag is a good representation of the different types that I'm experiencing in these layers here. Generally, it's very good. And the fact that it has very few rocks allows us to process it minimally. Because of this, Kyle's decided that there's no need to sift the material. The main consideration is getting the moisture content correct before putting it in the bags. In the beginning, Kyle did use a cement mixer where he would dump the soil into a cement mixer and then add moisture with the garden hose until it got to the right consistency. But he found later that he could skip that step by just adding moisture with the water hose to the soil and then kind of mixing it up in the pit and then taking it out directly from there. He found that by wetting the soil down with a garden hose or a sprinkler the day before and letting that soak in overnight, that it got the soil to about the right moisture content. Once the moisture content was about right, it was just a matter of digging the soil up, mixing it so you get the different types of soil mixed together, and then loading it up into a bucket, transporting it to the location, and it's ready to go in the bag. Here you can see he's just using a little scrap of 2x4 to flatten out the sides of the wall so you get that flatter surface on the outside. The soil is wet enough that it packs down nicely and takes and holds a shape and actually packs down really hard. but it's not muddy. And so you want to get it as wet as possible so that it molds and forms really well and dries really hard, but you don't want it so muddy that it's kind of squishing through the pores of the bag. We've got a good system going with Kyle working up top and I'm working down below. I'm processing and bringing him the dirt, setting it up on the scaffolding. He takes it from the scaffolding, sets it up on the wall, then gets back up on the wall, puts it into his chute and works and forms the dirt. That keeps it from him having to climb all the way up and down every time, and I'm able to just process, he's able to fill the bags. The dolly has really worked out well for this. He can just kind of gently rock it back and forth to get it to fill the bag and move it along the wall as he goes. We're able to get 3 buckets in a wheelbarrow, so we're doing batches of 3 buckets at a time, and I'm filling them about 3/4 of the way full so they're not too heavy. They're still quite heavy, but they're manageable. It would be bad if we filled them up all the way. I'm trying to get the moisture consistency right. As you can see, it's not mud by any means, but it's fairly wet. It actually looks drier here than it actually seemed when I was doing it. You know, it's wet enough that when you squeeze it together, it forms a good clump in your hand. He dug the pit down to about 4 foot depth, and from there has just expanded it and made it bigger. Really didn't want to go deeper because there's just a little ramp that you have to go of to get out of this pit, which is pretty challenging with the wheelbarrow full of dirt. The ramp is a little tricky. You can see me going up it here. It's not bad, but you know, any deeper would just make it a lot harder to get up out. And so it made sense to keep it about 4 foot deep and just make the pit wider. I also really like where he located the pit. It's close enough to the house to where, you know, it's a short walk. You're not expending a lot of labor transporting the dirt back, you know, to the house from a pit that's way far away. So it's close enough to be convenient, but not so close that you're worried about having a, you know, pit too close to the house. So it's a great location. Also, it's close to a water spigot. So the water is right there. So you can, you know, have handy access to water to dampen the soil and, you know, get it to the right moisture content. One thing about our water situation out here that's made this method possible is we're on a well, so we have pretty much unlimited water supply, and so it's possible just to, you know, leave the sprinkler on low for several hours and wet the soil down and just excavate directly. If you were in a situation where your water supply was more limited, then you would, you know, probably want to use a wheelbarrow to mix it with where you could more closely control the water that you're using. The walls are coming along nicely. They're almost done, just a little ways left to go, and we decided to go ahead and put in a materials order. That was delivered today. It's always exciting to get a materials order in, and in this order we have some cement for the stucco for the outside. We also have some materials for the roof and for the underlayment of the earthen floor. This is some good, hardy, physical, manual labor, just a lot of digging and, you know, pushing the wheelbarrow, carrying buckets. Good hard physical labor, and it's definitely hard on the body. We're doing pretty short work sessions, working for an hour and a half or 2 hours per session, and it is so hard on the body that it's you know, caused Kyle some physical problems. You know, at times his shoulder has bothered him, and he's had to, you know, take a few days off to rest and let his shoulder recover. So it's really hard on the body, and you just kind of have to take it slow and do what you can without overexerting yourself. But even with only working for an hour and a half or 2 hours, we're still able to get a good 30 to 45 feet of bag laid in that time. Here I'm cutting a couple of pieces of OSB that we're going to be layering over the top of the door frame in order to keep the bag from sagging down. The door frame isn't as wide as the bag. The bag is 18 inches wide. And even though we're only going to have a few layers of bag above this door frame, we don't want the bag to sag down over the door frame on top, so these boards will hold that up. It'll also give a wider surface to walk on as we're doing this bag layer and make it safer. Beside this door frame here, you can see how he ran the bag up to the door and then just went the opposite direction without ending the bag. So instead of cutting and tying the bag and then starting a new bag, he just folded it over and went back the other direction, which is maybe a little untraditional or abnormal, but it's really efficient and works really well. And he was able to just load up as much bag as he could get on the bucket and then just go until he ran out. And that's what he did across the top of this door frame. Instead of ending the bag and starting new again on the other side, he just didn't fill the bag on top of the door frame, started it again on the other side, and just saves time. And so he's not a perfectionist. He's more concerned with results. He's into efficiency. And so he's found some really good creative ways to make this efficient and be really productive all by himself. Well, the walls are coming along nicely. We just have one more layer to go around the entire circumference, and then we can start building up one side. It's going to be a single slope roof with about 1.5 feet drop from one side to the other. And so we'll be adding extra layers on one side, and we'll be showing you that in our next video. We'll also be pulling out the transit to make sure we get our elevations correct and that it's all nice and level, and then getting ready to put on the roof. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and join us again next time.